But I also believe that the First Amendment protects my right to say some of this music is just obnoxious to the extreme. It's ugly, it's misogynistic, it borders on the, it is obscene. And I don't like being forced to listen to it, but I respect somebody's right to do that.
It has often been said that it's wrong-headed to equate the fight for civil rights to the struggle for gay rights. I certainly have been disappointed by the Black community's overall silence when it comes to the issue of gay rights. Is it wrong to equate these two movements?
Of course it's not wrong. I mean, there are no such thing as gay civil rights. There really is no such thing as Black civil rights. There are just plain civil rights, and everybody in this room has them, and everybody in this country has them. There's no division among the people. And, you know, the right wing has been successful in convincing some Black people that gays and lesbians are asking for special rights. What are these special rights? I've never heard of anyone being extended special rights. I've never heard of anybody really asking for special rights, but only asking for the rights all Americans enjoy. I believe this strongly, and believe there ought not be a separation between rights for these people and rights for these people. They're just rights, and all of us have them, and those who don't have them deserve to have them.
The historically solid coalition between Blacks and Jews in the civil rights struggle in this country seems to be all but a distant memory today. The coalition, it seems, is gone. If I am correct, why is that? And do you see these two communities coming together? Is it important to do so?
I don't think you are correct. If you look at the voting patterns of Blacks and Jews, these two groups of people vote together more often than any other groups of people in the United States. And if you look at the voting records of Black and Jewish members of Congress, again, the similarities between their voting records almost exact. So here are two groups of people and their representatives in the nation's legislature voting and acting as if they were one. Now, that's not to say there are not some differences and disagreements, but almost since the beginning of the last century until today, there has been a solid working relationship between these two groups of people. And I hope, because it's been beneficial not only to both groups, but also to the rest of the country, I hope that this relationship will continue on and on and on and on.
From where I sit, it seems that Black folks invoke the code of silence when it comes to Black conservatives, when it comes to those among us who do not support a strong civil rights agenda or who have actively worked against affirmative action. We don't criticize them. Instead, we say nothing and kind of circle the wagons. We tend to give a pass to Black conservatives such as Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Ron Page, the Education Secretary, Clarence Thomas, Shelby Steele. You have not been silent. And about Black conservatives, this is some of the things you've said. Like ventriloquist dummies, they speak in their puppet master's voice, but we can see their lips moving. You also said, Bush has selected nominees from the Taliban wing of American politics, appeased the wretched appetites of the extreme right wing, and chosen cabinet officials whose devotion to the Confederacy is nearly canine in its uncritical affection. So how do you really feel?
Well, I said a moment ago that I believe, you know, I went to a Quaker high school, and it was a great experience for me. I'd never been exposed to Quakers, never met any Quakers until I went away, left my home behind and went to this place. It was just a great experience for me. You have to speak truth to power. That's why you have a voice. That's why you have a mind, because somebody has to say to powerful people who are doing the wrong thing, you're doing the wrong thing. And I'm proud of what you just read there. Among all the many, many words I've written and spoken, those are among the best.
So tell us, what is your opinion about Condoleezza Rice?
You know, I've only met Ms. Rice once, I think. She is a remarkably accomplished person. You know, from being the chancellor here to her present position, high in the United States government, higher than anyone but one other person has risen before. And I think you have to give her her propers. And I don't accept, well, let me begin again. I don't put her in the same category as I do some of the other people whose names you mentioned, because I don't think she belongs there. And even though I would guess, and I don't know much about her politics in the sense of, I'm sure she's a Republican, and I'm an independent. I'm sure that she believes certain things that I don't believe, but I don't put her in the same category as these other people you mentioned. I don't think she's as bad as they are. In fact, in some respects, I think she's better than they are.
So tell us about, for example, Colin Powell.
I have a lot of respect for Colin Powell. I think he found himself put in an embarrassing position, not embarrassing at the moment, but embarrassing to him ever since. I think it's lowered his standing in the world community, in the American community. He was made to lie about the presence of weapons of mass destruction, and it wasn't something he did, but he was made to do it. He was forced to do it because of the information he was given, which the whole world knows was wrong now, but I admire him. I got in an argument with him once about something we were talking about before, and about gays in the military. I heard him give a speech at American University announcing, when he was head of the Joint Chiefs, announcing that he was opposed to gays in the military. And I said, you've written so movingly about your own experiences as a black man in the military. He says, not the same thing. And I should have pressed him and said, well, what's the difference? I hoped he wouldn't say the ignorant thing that some people say. In fact, I knew he wouldn't. He's too smart for that you can choose to be gay. Like people say, hey, I guess I'll be gay. And then as some ignorant people believe, they think people say, oh, I'm tired of being gay. I'll be something else. But you can't choose whether or not to be black. You either are or you aren't. But I didn't pursue it, but I felt less of him because of that.
Clarence Thomas.
My wife and I were just in Justice Thomas' presence. Oh. I have a very good friend that some people will be surprised to hear this, named Armstrong Williams. And Armstrong and I are like this on everything, except we're good friends and we're close friends. We appeared on a TV show for about 6 years.
Do people know who Armstrong Williams is?
Armstrong Williams is people know who Armstrong Williams is.
Students may not.
Armstrong Williams is a commentator, a columnist, a prominent figure among conservative black Americans. In fact, he's sort of a mentor to many younger conservative black people in the Bush administration, not quite like a father, but sort of a mentor, a developer, in the same way that Clarence Thomas was to him. So he and Thomas are very, very close. I'll tell you something interesting about Armstrong. When Thomas was being confirmed by the U.S. Senate for the Supreme Court, Armstrong really acted as an attack dog against Anita Hill and behaved badly against Anita Hill. And I was interviewing Armstrong for a program at the University of Virginia called Explorations of Black Leadership, where we interview black figures, men and women. And I was interviewing Armstrong, and I said to him, have you ever thought about what you did with Anita Hill? And he said, yes. He said, I'm sorry about it. He said, I'd like to apologize to her. I said, have you? He said, I don't know where she is. I said, Armstrong, you can't find out where she is. She's at Brandeis. I know that. Anyway, Armstrong and I are good friends. And Armstrong invited me to this book party at his house for Justice Thomas, and my wife and I went. We met Justice Thomas, whom I had met many, many years ago when he was working with the Education Department. We met Chief Justice Roberts, who came by. We met Alito, Justice Alito, and one of the others. We missed the Cheneys, damn. But we missed them. And it was a pleasant affair. So what is your view? But anyway, I've been very harsh in criticizing Justice Thomas. I've said that I disagree. Well, I should say the NAACP opposed him being put on the lower court, opposed him being put on the Supreme Court, and have opposed almost every ruling he's made since he's been there. and think he's wrong-headed and behaved badly, and we wish he were not there.
The U.S. Supreme Court in 1968 came to your rescue, voted 9-0 in your favor. What is your view of the court today under the leadership of Chief Justice
I don't think they
Roberts?
would do it again. I don't think they would vote the same way for me again. I think this entirely different group of people, perhaps some members of the majority, that four-person majority that tries to vote right in most of the cases, would have voted for me as the majority did in 1968, but I don't think the majority would do it today. And I think many of the cases that we won in the 50s and the 1960s would be lost today. And for people who say there's no difference between the political parties, I mean, you have to think these people are living in some other planet because they can't believe that the court would be the same had the election results been different in 2004 or 2000. They'd be radically different than they are now, and our lives would be radically different than they are now. So don't tell me there's no difference.
Economic equity is a topic about which you've been speaking most frequently and passionately. In a speech at Cornell, you criticized the Bush administration's opposition, and I quote, to meaningful equality, political and economic equity. Now, given the NAACP's goal, which is to work for racial equality, how does economic equity fall within that mandate?
Well, you can't have racial equality unless you have economic equality. And economic equality has always been a desire of the movement of black people. If you look at the Montgomery Bus Boycott in 1955, when it begins, they're asking not just for the right to sit where they want to on the bus, they're asking for the most important seat on the bus, and that's the driver's seat. Now, unfortunately, this is a demand they drop, but from the first, they wanted not just integrated bus seats, they want to integrate that one bus seat that decides which way the bus is going to go. And that's been true of almost every initiative African Americans have made. It's always had an economic component. These economic components have proven to be, in the larger sense, harder to achieve than the other ones, like integrated bus seats or integrated lunch counter seats. But nonetheless, it's always been a goal that we've had, and I'm happy to say the NAACP has pursued it for almost 100 years today. And we've won some victories. I mean, you can't look at the black people running corporations, sitting on boards of directors, sitting in executive suites now, without thinking that that just didn't happen like that. It happened because generation after generation after generation pushed and pulled and screamed and yelled and marched and protested and made it happen. But it never happened enough. It hasn't happened enough up to now. And I don't think unless we begin to push harder and more strongly, that it will happen anytime in the future.
You have made a statement that under the Bush administration, there are 5 million more people in poverty than before. What is all that about? Why?
Well, if you give unnecessary and unneeded tax cuts to the richest people in the country, and thereby weaken the ability of the government to intervene in people's lives, and if you have a philosophy that doesn't believe the government should intervene in people's lives, whether it has the ability to or not, and if you operate as Grover Norquist, who is the evil genius behind most of this, says that we want to starve the government, make it so small it will drown in a bathtub. Well, in New Orleans, they did that. They made the government so ineffective, so weak, that it was unable to help these people. So they're succeeding, and one of the great harms they've done is economic harm to people. They've created an occasion where Americans learned during the Depression that the government could hold out a helping hand. And in the last several years, people have learned that that helping hand won't be held out to them. Look at the mortgage crisis. We knew this was coming years ago, but no one did anything about it until it became catastrophic. And it's still, you know, it's not only happening here, it's happening worldwide. And people who were knowledgeable about these kinds of things predicted this was going to happen, knew it was going to happen, just as people who were knowledgeable about it knew that Katrina was going to happen and knew what the result would be.